Okay, what is up guys? So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about Golems B10. This is a video I promised a few weeks ago and I am getting around to fulfilling that promise. Now with Golems B10, really the barrier to entry is going to be a passive heal on the first skill. And the way you kind of think about golems is there, as with most farmable content, there are really basically roughly three levels. This is how I think of it at least, but roughly three levels of farming. And generally the first level is going to be your survivable and slow team. And then the final level is going to be your fast and survivable team. So in the first level, you're going to be running pretty slow, but generally you're going to be able to get roughly 100% success, 100% success rate. And then in the final level, you would kind of get you would have an extremely fast speed, and you would also have 100% success rate. And then you kind of have the third level, which is in the middle, which is somewhere in the middle between those two. And that's kind of where you have a moderately fast team and a 100% success rate. So those are the three levels. Those are the three ways I kind of think about this type of farmable content. And then within those three levels, you kind of have anywhere in between survivability and time. So really the first way to kind of think about, the first team you might want to think about is your 100% survivable team. And if you have your 100% slow and survivable team, then you always know that's kind of like your backup team that you can always go to. Say if you're going to sleep and you need to run something, and you need to know that it's going to clear 100% for your 20 runs. So if you know what team has a great success rate, then that's always going to be your backup. And then once you have that kind of first level team, then you can build on that and try to improve your run times as you get better monsters or you get better gem sets. So really those are kind of the three initial levels of Golems B10 that I think you should think about. So to kind of progress from that, I'm going to show you my first team that I was able to run Golems B10 at I think it was 100% success rate, although it's been a long time since I've actually used this team, but I'm pretty sure it was 100%. So as you can see, my first team, I kind of used the two dark Seastars, a fire cura, and also the dark jack. So this team worked for me because the dark Seastars, of course, are your defense aggressors, and so they will output some decent damage along with being very tanky. And then with the majority of successful B10 teams, at least to start off with, most people find it easier to run these teams with a passive healer who has the passive heal on the first skill. So this is kind of why people who had the Water Percept early on in the game, generally they had an easier time of entry into Golems B10 early in the game when we did not have very many passive healers. So those people who were able to get the Water Percept, they kind of already had the starting points of a GB10 team. But then they introduced the Dark Jack because more than likely it was because of some of the outcry, from the community, because everyone did not have a Water Percept. And so we ended up getting this Dark Jack, which allowed more people to enter GB10. Since then, we've also received the Dark July. So she's also a passive healer, and I believe one of the Gemini twins is also a passive healer. So those monsters have the potential to support a GB10 team, at least in its initial stage, particularly for players who are earlier on in MSL. And that's because with the passive heals, it's like a guaranteed heal where you don't have to rely on your healer to gain boost souls. And because if they don't gain boost souls, then you don't get a heal, and there's a chance that your damage dealers will die before your healer actually can get their heal off. So really, the kind of slower team that you can consider is this team where you have DPS and you have 2 healers. So you can have a passive heal and you can have an active healer. So in as you can see in this case, I had my active healer was the fire cura, and I liked her because her shield gave my team more survivability when she actually got it off. The shield, as long as it was up before a status effect, it would protect the monsters from status effects. And as most people know, the Dark Seastars are very susceptible to a death down. And so, getting that, but having a shield on the Dark Seastars actually really boosts their defensive capabilities because they have so much defense to reinforce that particular shield. So this team was fairly slow for me, but it worked. It was sustainable. I want to say it might have been roughly at 3 minutes, but like I said, I haven't run this team in a long time. Really can't remember. But I think I know a lot of people do not have access to the Dark Seastar. And I think that more than likely a lot of the monsters we have received recently may actually fill the void that the Dark Seastar that you might have if you don't have a Dark Seastar. And in that case, you can probably more than likely use the amphibians we got in the past. The Dark Lat might work. Now, I have not built those units. I haven't had a need to build them as of yet. There are a lot of other monsters for me to work on. But there's a possibility that those monsters who everyone was able to receive in the past may actually support a similar team like this, where you have an active healer, a passive healer, and then you've got your DPS. And then the amphibians actually will act a little bit differently, more than likely will act a little different than the Dark Seastars, in that you can put a little more damage on them, that you can sacrifice some of the defensive capabilities for attack, maybe an attack gem or something, or I think you have to build them on crit, so maybe that's going to be your focus. However you choose to build your amphibians, there can be a little more leeway when it comes to damage because they will heal themselves. But those are some options, and it's possible that the Dark Mihos might work in this case. I'm not 100% sure, but just in general, something that is fairly tanky in this case, along with your curas, would help support the team. Now, if you want to go with a different type of damage dealer, you might want to have more of a bruiser type, where it's 1 or 2 attack gems with defense or HP gem, to provide some stability for that team. And the other reason this particular team kind of works for GB10 is the fact that there is no light monster here. So if you want to use a light monster, that's a little bit of a different, though you have different things to think about in that case. But in what I'm showing you, this particular team, none of these monsters will, or all of these monsters will be considered neutral when they're attacked by the enemies on the floor. And I guess I should have talked about this earlier, but as most people know, the initial problem of GB10 is really the Dark Moonflowers. If you get 4 Dark Moonflowers on the first stage, before that it was a lot more of a threat before they added the Minotaurs. But 4 Dark Moonflowers would decimate most teams, even before you got to the actual Golem. But in this case, there's no light monsters here. All of them are pretty tanky, and so more than likely they'll be able to survive through even a 4-turn Moonflower wave, which is one of the biggest threats before you get to the Golem. And so that's one thing to think about, is kind of the idea of a neutral team which will spread the damage, which is fairly tanky. You've got 2 healers. One of them is a passive healer, and more than likely they will be able to survive up into the Golem. Now, I would mark this team as between a slow and a moderate team, but they should, you know, there should be some very nice survivability on this type of build. And so the next team that you can consider is going to be a light-based team. So guys, I think I'm going to talk about the light-based teams in a follow-up video, so make sure you check back in for part 2. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, leave me a comment, and I will see you in the next video.